Song Mu, a Chinese language and literature major, traveled through a strange journey but found that this world had entered a turning point after the Tang Dynasty. There were demons and demons in this world, and literati could gather their literary strength. Imperial poetry, songs, and prose are used to eliminate demons, and great Confucian articles are used to suppress demons. Song Mu relied on a book of ancient and modern poetry that he accidentally obtained, and then borrowed the song Ci and Yuan Chu in his mind to embark on the path of imperial examination and defense against demons and demons. Surrounded by the stars, there is chaos in the world, and literary strength suddenly rises to ensure the peace of the world. I am all illusory in the world, writing poetry and slaying demons. Keywords of the novel. I use poetry to slay demons and eliminate demons without a pop-up window. I download the complete collection of poetry to slay demons and eliminate demons. I read the latest chapters of poetry to slay demons and eliminate demons. Chapter 1. I am Tong Xing Song Mu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. I am Tong Xing Song Mu. Oh my God, my Mu Gu'er is a child of the great Yuan dynasty. Which destroyer is jealous of my Song family? This is to cut off my Song family's 300-year literary tradition. Song Mu woke up in a daze, listening to a few painful cries from a distance, his expression still somewhat dazed. I only remember that I just had a lively conversation with the vendor at the antique market, where knives entered the flesh. Finally, I managed to find a book called A Comprehensive Mirror of Ancient and Modern Poetry, for 10 yuan. I was about to take it back and verify its authenticity, but unexpectedly, something unexpected happened and a beer bottle fell from somewhere in the sky. The beer bottle roared down and exploded on the side of my body, rubbing against my head. The shattered green glass shattered the ground, causing me to panic and retreat, stepping into the sewer grill on the nearby road. But just as I was trying to pull my feet out, a pink sports car came rushing towards me. Song Mu, who went up to the sky with the sewer grill, only heard a earth-shattering sound at that time, and then saw a heavily dressed woman holding her chest and shouting loudly in a sports car that had already been driven on horseback. And the windshield wipers that were still shaking on a sunny day indicated that the other party was trying to remedy it at the last moment. Song Mu, who had been tumbling in the sky for 2.5 weeks, had his head heavily on the ground. He only saw the newly collected, comprehensive mirror of ancient and modern poetry, before his death fall in front of him, and the blood flowing from his body dyed the withered yellow pages red. So, are you dead? But why does this place still light oil lamps? Song Mu muttered inwardly, and everything gradually became clear under his gaze. He lay in a quaint and spacious room, illuminated only by an oil lamp. The slender flame placed on the side of the bedside brought a dim glow of withered dusk. Beside Song Mu, a skinny old man with a goatee sat upright, with one hand resting on his wrist and the other twisting his beard, pondering something. In an instant, he met Song Mu's eyes. Oh, you actually woke up. Dr. Goat, who noticed that Song Mu had opened his eyes and was also taken aback. Despite pulling off one of his grayish-white beard, he frowned and quickly examined Song Mu's pulse. Going to Yonggang outside the city is a place of great danger. Young Master Song, who was thin and frail, stayed there for half a night, just like passing through a ghost gate. He woke up so quickly, so don't just shine again. The goat doctor murmured, secretly praying to Song Mu not to let his life shine again. Otherwise, he would ruin his reputation as a skilled hand for so many years. Listening to the sound inside the room, a short and chubby person immediately entered the door. When he saw Song Mu on the bed, he opened his eyes and hurriedly rushed forward, asking the doctor. Lu Longzhong, is my nephew okay? My Song family has only had such a single seedling left from the 17th generation until now. If Mu Gu'er cannot survive, Song Liangda, feel guilty to my elder brother and ancestors. The man is Song Mu's second uncle, Song Liangda. Seeing Song Mu wake up, he quickly approached and asked with concern. Mu Gu'er, you're okay? You can talk to Uncle Air and tell him why he went to Yongang. That place is a place that sucks people's yang energy. Song Liangda wiped away her tears and said, full of fear at the moment, but suddenly saw Song Mu's face in pain, and she let out a painful cry, fainting. At first, Song Magong was relatively clear-headed, but at that moment when he opened his eyes, the consciousness of the body owner began to invade, and a massive amount of information rushed in, making Song Magong feel his head almost torn apart in unbearable pain. Dr. Lu, what's wrong with my nephew? Can you think of a way? Song Liangda saw that Song Mu was unconscious again and quickly sought help from Lu Langzhong next to him. Lu Langzhong gritted his teeth and touched Song Mu's pulse, which was still there. After a moment, he spoke up. Perhaps young Master Song's yang energy has dried up and yin energy has entered his body. Second Master Song, hurry up and grab 3 pairs of tonifying qi powder. Now pour down the strong medicine and see if it can save young Master Song's life. Upon hearing Lu Langzhong's words, Song Liangda was already frightened to the point of splitting his liver and gallbladder. He quickly nodded and rushed out. Lu Langzhong took out 2 silver needles and quickly pricked Song Mu's forehead and soles twice, then let out a light sigh. This Song family's cultural heritage has been passed down to this day, so it seems that it may not be able to be preserved. Just as Lu Lang was frantically rescuing, Song Mu was still conscious in his mind and was stunned by the massive information that flooded into his mind. This world is no longer the ancient world known to Song Mu. There are 3 emperors and 5 emperors, the spring and autumn period and the warring states period, the Qin, Han, and 3 kingdoms. However, after the prosperous Tang Dynasty, everything has changed. In the 10th year of the Tianbao era, a meteor fell from the sky and fell into the imperial city of Chang'an. The meteor hung in the main hall, shining brightly and initially regarded as auspicious. However, because the Wensu star in the southern sky was not bright, people said that the Wensu star would descend to earth, but people would die if they touched it. Many servants in the palace also died suddenly, and the imperial city was temporarily banned as a place of death, considering it a disaster. After 3 years of falling meteors, Chang'an underwent abnormal movements and demons frequently appeared in the world. The Tang Dynasty's vast territory underwent changes. At that time, An Lushan led troops in rebellion, and the Tang Dynasty was on the verge of collapse. Although the An Lushan rebellion was suppressed later, man-made disasters temporarily ceased, and demons emerged. The human race fought hard to resist, and within 7 years, demons were everywhere on the land of China, causing great suffering. This is known as the 7-year demon rebellion in history. At that time, a great Confucian scholar named Zhang Su pioneered the concept of literary power, using literary power to write poetry, songs, and essays as weapons, spears, swords, and halberds that could conquer and kill demons. He then led the literati of the human race to devote themselves to studying ancient literature and modern prose, all of which became literary power, to defend against enemies, and ultimately used it to slay all the great demons in the world within 30 years. Later, Emperor Tang Li Mo appointed the literary power of the world to suppress demons, and then became the national title. He changed the country's name to Yuan, which became the Yuan dynasty. He also gathered great scholars from all over the world to write the world's treasure book, the complete book of the 4 seas, to control demon stars, thus nourishing the cultural heritage of the Yuan dynasty. The national title continues for 200 years today and continues beyond. If calculated by time, it should be around 1100 AD now, but if the Yuan dynasty stands tall, then the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms in history are not here, and the Song dynasty has not emerged, and there is no trace of the Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties. No Lu Yong, no Li Qingzhao, no Ouyang Xiu. No Su Shi, no Xian Qiji, no Lu Yu. No Guan Hanqing, no Ma Ziyuan, no Bai Pu. The Yuan dynasty opened up a new side of the human race with its mysterious literary power. This is a thoroughly literati-oriented dynasty, where one can obtain a literary position through writing, accumulate literary strength through writing, and eliminate demons and demons through wielding literary strength, ensuring the stability of the country. Gathering literary strength to strengthen oneself requires extensive reading of ancient and modern books, and mastery of countless classics. The mountains and seas of books flow backwards and forth. To conquer a strong enemy, one must be proficient in poetry, songs, and prose, and use poetry, songs, and short sentences as a weapon to combat the enemy and set up an attack. If he had only traveled to ancient times, Song Mu could only curse at the unfairness of heaven and accept everything calmly. But now that the world values literati more than poetry and prose, Song Mu, a graduate student of Chinese language and literature, almost screams and jumps up. This world has lost the Song, Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties, but the countless poems, songs, and essays of later generations still exist in Song Mu's mind. The broad sea allows fish to leap, and the high sky allows birds to fly. This world is like a splashed ink landscape painting with a large amount of blank space. At this moment, Song Mu is filled with ink, as if the world's painting scroll is waiting for Song Mu to use ink to write. While Song Mu was feeling a little relieved that he still had some potential, he also knew about the background of his body. This person, also known as Song Mu, is the 17th generation eldest grandson of the Song family in Shiyang County, Jizhou, Jiangnan West Road. 300 years ago, the Song family moved to this place, and the second generation produced a jinshi named Song Xingji. Afterwards, the Song family had 3 generations and 5 jinshi, full of Confucian scholars. In that turbulent and demonic era, they were even more brilliant. After the establishment of the Yuan dynasty, the Song family became a prominent cultural lineage in the Jiangnan West Road. The 4th generation of the Song family's ancestors wrote books and established themselves, becoming a prominent family along with the inheritance of poetry, lyrics, songs, and prose in the world. They even once overshadowed the Song family in Guangping. This world of poetry has its own cultural heritage, and Tang poets such as Li and Du have established their own poetry schools. After collecting their bloodline, descendants can learn the poetry of their ancestors and possess innate literary power to defeat enemies. In the later Yuan dynasty, Emperor Taizu changed the imperial examination system, which broadened the cultural context. Ordinary people were able to obtain official titles or write chapters that have been passed down for generations, and also enjoyed the benefits of the world's cultural heritage. The Song family shone brightly for hundreds of years until Song Mu's grandfather, Song Bingda, devoted himself to studying literature for 50 years before finally obtaining the position of Juren. However, after that, he fell from grace and could no longer continue the glory of his ancestors. In the end, he had no choice but to take up his position as a county official, but was framed due to his rigid behavior, and he almost wanted to die in vain. The old lady of the Song family spent countless silver coins and connections to retrieve the person, and returned to Shiyang County with a large family to become a wealthy man. Despite this, in order to revive the glory of his ancestors, Song Mu's grandfather and father have always adhered to the desire of a scholarly family and studied literature day by day. However, their cultural background has gradually declined. Only Song Mu's father, Song Liangtong, was able to obtain a scholar's position in his 40s. 2 years ago, Song Liangtong encountered a demon on his way to the provincial capital to take the imperial examination, and both his mother and son passed away. His beloved son also passed away, and the old man of Song also passed away. Overnight, only his 17th generation grandson Song Mu and his second uncle Song Liangda, a family of 3, were left in the family. The Song family was almost defeated overnight, and their past glory disappeared. They fell into the ordinary family situation, leaving only their old house and a few shops to support their faces. A year ago, at the age of 17, Song Mu finally obtained the position of Tong Xingwen. The Song family was overjoyed and delighted. In order to revive the Song family's glory, his second uncle and others went to the east to do business together. However, the sea ship encountered a sea monster and eventually sank to the bottom of the sea, losing everything. All the family's belongings were taken away by the creditors. Now, the Song family only has one ancestral home and a few acres of thin farmland outside the city, struggling to make ends meet. And the reason why Song Mu suffered this calamity was also to raise a sum of silver to go to the capital to study for a scholar. That's Song Mu making a bet with several young masters in the south of the city. If he sleeps overnight in the barren hills outside the city, he will give 10 taels of silver. For 10 taels of silver, the thin and weak Song Mu almost completely cut off the 300-year-old incense of the Song family. New book released, friends, how much sorrow can one have in life, like not collecting and voting, Welcome Yuan 589391108 to join the journey of roast authors, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Defeated Song Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Defeated Song Family. When Song Mu woke up again, it was already early morning. Although his head was still a bit dizzy and he couldn't use his strength, Song Mu sat up carefully. Looking at the thin quilt covering his body, Song Mu looked into the room with the moonlight leaking in from outside. The house is simple and unsophisticated, but it is also carved beams and painted rafters, which has some ancient charm. But the strange thing is that the white walls on all sides are empty, and even the window paper on the carved windows is a bit yellow and tattered. Looking at the ground of the house again, a layer of soil was exposed out of thin air. The ground inside the house was even shorter than the corner, with only a few broken green bricks missing corners. I think someone must have dug up the blue bricks that were covered all over the house. And the bed under Song Mu's body was nothing more than 2 benches with a bed board on them. Apart from a pile of books piled up in a corner of the ground, there were no other objects around, and the furniture and tables in the house must have been gone long ago. At this moment, Song Mu remembered that Lu Langzhong had treated him yesterday, no wonder he was still sitting in his own medicine box. Carved beams and painted rafters' family is so down and out. Song Mu shook his head, sighed slightly, and prepared to get up to find water to drink. Everything depends on human factors. Even if this family is now in a state of disrepair, Song Mu believes that as long as people live, everything will change. Mugger, are you up now? Just as Song Mu was getting out of bed, a blurry sound came from the corner of the wall, and then he saw a thick and short figure crawling up from the ground towards him. Song Mu was calm when he heard the voices, but when he saw the person coming, he was a bit stunned. Uncle Air, why are you here? I'm afraid you might have any more emergencies in the middle of the night, so I'll sleep here and take care of you. Mugger, what's going on now? Do you need something to eat? I'll go get it for you. Song Liangda looked at Song Mu with great concern, lit the oil lamp, and then saw a layer of bedding on the ground in the corner of the house not far away. It must be the place where Song Liangda rested tonight. Seeing Uncle Air being so considerate, Song Mu was also very grateful in his heart. He pursed his lips, but shook his head slightly. I'll go get some water, Uncle. I'm fine now. Don't wander around. I'll go get it for you. There's still some medicine left from yesterday's decoction, and I'll bring it to you as well. Song Liangda saw that Song Mu was about to come out alone and quickly helped him sit down by the bed. Then he quickly opened the door and went out. Soon, the sound of calling for his second aunt came from the courtyard. The courtyard was a bit lively, and it was just when the morning sky was slightly bright. Song Mu, dressed in clothes, leaned against the windowsill, and there was already a hint of fireworks in the courtyard outside the candlelight. Song Mu sighed, and now he has completely accepted all of this. However, many things in his previous life were not completed, so just don't die so miserably in this life. In no time, Song Liangda walked in with a bowl of water and medicine, placed them by Song Mu's bedside, and a little girl jumped out from behind Song Liangda. This is Song Mingwei, the only daughter of Uncle Air, at the age of 7 or 8, with the nickname Yaya. The little girl was not fair-looking, but her eyes were big, and the candlelight shone brightly. She tied 2 slightly withered and small braids and carefully took out a handkerchief from her pocket. Then, she opened it and twisted a brownish-black object from inside into Song Mu's hand. "Big brother, here's this candy for you. Take the medicine after finishing." The little girl said very sensible, but she clenched her handkerchief tightly again and forced her gaze to move away from the sugar placed in Song Mu's palm. At that moment, Song Mu saw that only a few small fragments were left in her handkerchief. "All right, Yaya, go ask your mother to bring the food in. We'll all have breakfast at Mu Ji's house," said Song Liangda to Song Mingwei, and the little girl ran out quickly. "Mu Gayer, let's drink the medicine first. We'll have breakfast later. You haven't had enough oil and rice for several days, so your body won't be able to handle it." Song Liangda said to Song Mu, who took the medicine and nodded. He didn't frown as he looked at the cloudy liquid and gulped it down. Slow down, don't worry." Song Liangda quickly came up and patted Song Mu's back. For his nephew, Song Liangda valued him more than his own daughter. When Song Liangda was young, he was overnourished by medicinal stones and had a weak and short body. The doctor said that having a daughter was already a blessing from heaven and earth. Now that his elder brother Song Liangtong is no longer in the world, he has left behind this unique seedling. Song Liangda is determined not to let Song Mu have any more problems, otherwise he will have no face to see his ancestors when he enters the underworld one day. Fortunately, my nephew has been humble and polite since childhood. Apart from being a bit dull in his interactions with others, he was unexpectedly intelligent in his studies. In the 2nd year after my elder brother left, he unexpectedly passed the entrance exam for Tong Sheng alone, which gave the Song family, who had fallen to the bottom, some hope. What Song Liangda couldn't figure out was that even if his nephew went to county school on weekdays, he would have to tell himself why he went to do such dangerous things the day before yesterday. Song Mu, who had just suppressed the bitterness in his throat, couldn't have thought of what Song Liangda was thinking at the moment. He just felt that his body was too weak, and he probably needed more exercise in the future to live well. In no time, Aunt Chu had already arrived with food, and Song Liangda also helped move the table and chairs. Song Mu was supposed to come forward to help, but was stopped from doing anything. Aunt Chu is a woman with a tiger's back and a bear's waist, looking quite strong. Song Mu also learned from his memory that Chu came from a farming family. When the Song family married Uncle Heir, they couldn't afford to give him too much silver, and Uncle Heir was also slightly ill. In the end, the old man took the lead and found a strong girl from a poor family in the past village. Since the departure of Song Mu's parents, this dilapidated family has also relied heavily on the support of his second aunt. Although diligent and sincere, it has only barely fed 4 people. "Mugoer, please eat more. This is the chicken stewed for you. Yesterday you only drank a little soup, but today you have taken a big bite." On the table with missing edges and corners, Song Liangda picked all the chicken from the table into Song Mu's bowl. Song Mu nodded and asked Uncle Heir and the others to eat together, only to see that they didn't move their chopsticks. Song Mu sighed and immediately put a piece of chicken into his mouth, then picked out a chicken leg from a bowl and handed it to Song Mingwei. "Yaya, help big brother eat chicken legs, big brother can't finish it," Song Mu said, but blocked Song Liangda and pressed the chicken legs straight into Song Ming's micro bowl. After several evasions, Song Liangda saw that Song Mu was getting anxious and afraid of getting sick again, so he asked Song Mingwei to thank Song Mu. Song Mingwei sat on the bench, swaying his thin legs and happily eating chicken legs, while Zhu Shi beside him was tearful. "Which day did it happen? My brother Mu is usually lively, but he almost passed away by the gates of hell. Mu Guer will become a Jinshi in the future, and he will also learn Jinshi Memorial Archway in the future." At this moment, Zhu wiped away her tears and spoke softly, probably the same painful howl she had that day. Song Liangda stopped Zhu Shi from talking about these ominous things at the dining table, but Song Mu laughed it off. Song Liangda's face also changed a bit, and he still asked. Mugoer, tell Uncle Heir honestly, how could you have left the city to go to Yanggang the day before yesterday? Don't you know you can't go to that place? Song Mu was stunned for a moment, but also shook his head helplessly. As for the reason why Song Mu sought his own death, he did not have this memory. He only remembered that after leaving the city, Song Mu walked towards a deserted tomb, but that place did not go to Yanggang. Uncle Heir, I really don't remember. Song Mu could only say to Song Liangda like this. Seeing Song Mu's sincere expression, Song Liangda didn't want to explain the reason behind it. Song Liangda didn't dare to ask, so he had to give up. However, he also talked about this year's Imperial examination. Song Mu was about to prepare for the examination in the capital, but the cost of the journey had not yet been determined. Mu Goer, although you take good care of yourself, both your uncle and aunt have a lot of strength, and you can still make ends meet with a few taels of silver. Even worse. Shuyang County is going to build a high city wall these days, so I will also go to work. Yes, this time, we will never be tempted by that villain again. Let them take away all our wealth and even dig the green bricks. Zhu Shi also sobbed beside us. However, Song Mu knew that the construction of the city was arranged by the government as corvée labor, which was heavy and tiring. The Song family inherited the literary positions of the Song family and Song Liangtong, and with Song Mu's current status as a child, they were barely exempt from labor. However, if they went to work, they could earn several tens of one a day. When Song Liangda said these words, he almost gritted his teeth, completely disregarding his current legitimate identity as a member of the Song family for the sake of his nephew. Song Mu also put down his bowl and secretly clenched his fist with his left hand. Since I have already survived in this world, there is no saying of sitting and eating dry food. And about the matter of going to Yanggang, even though I didn't go to such a dangerous place, who is going to put my original self to death? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Ancient Books in the Brain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Ancient Books in the Brain. It has been 7 days since Song Mu arrived in this world. Several friendly children and families with the same cultural background in the city have all come to visit Song Mu. The supplements sent to him have also improved his health a lot, but occasionally his mind still feels a bit dizzy. Song Mu thinks it should be because he is absorbing the memories of the original master. The sun was shining brightly today, and Song Liangda finally allowed Song Mu to come out for a walk. Song Mu was also delighted to finally step out of the courtyard and take a real look at this strange ancient world. The Song family courtyard is located in the north of Shuyang County, and is a small and elegant courtyard. It is also the last face of the Song family. Song Mu and his second uncle and aunt said a word, then pulled their slightly wrinkled plain white robe and stepped out of the courtyard door. Turning through an alleyway, a sudden commotion began in front of us. A wide street appeared, with red soil compacted and a layer of fine sand sprinkled on the ground. On both sides of the street were 1 or 2 low brick and wood shops, with various signs hanging at the entrance. The vendors kept shouting and children were also playing and frolicking on the road. Song Mu stood at the entrance of the alley in a daze, looking around for a moment, listening to various noises, and looking at the street scene where the breath of life rushed in. His heart was filled with some emotions. The situation that could only be vaguely seen in ancient paintings in the past is now presented to oneself in this way. Song Mu stopped and watched for a moment, then took a step outside and walked on this sunny road. Suddenly, Song Mu felt that he was still alive, living brightly. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Don't you have long eyes? At this moment, there was a shout on the road, followed by a few screams of surprise from behind, and then a big hand pushed behind Song Mu. Song Mu stumbled and grabbed the nearby stall to catch his breath. Turning his head, he saw several people dressed in gray clothes and servants pushing away pedestrians walking on the road. Behind the servants, 4 thick-clothed servants were steadily carrying a sedan chair, and the creaking sound of the sedan chair was clear and audible. Stop. As the sedan chair passed by Song Mu, a sudden sound of suspicion came from within, and then a voice came from within. The next moment, someone lifted the curtain and walked out. Upon seeing the visitor, Song Mu immediately shouted a guilty plea in his heart. Among the sedan chairs came a tall and thin man of the same age as Song Mu, wearing a pink robe and a pink scarf on his head. He held a folding fan with pink fan bones in his hand, and a pair of pink boots stepped on the ground, with his toes pointing towards Li Mu as he stepped forward. If this were a graceful young master, Song Mu would also say that he had a beautiful voice. However, the newcomer's face was overly slender, the bridge of the nose was sunken, the eyes were half covered, and a few faint whiskers were sporadically growing on his lips. He looked really shabby. And this person was also recognized by Song Mu, who was Qi Dazhua, the second son of the Qi family, a cultural family in the north of the city. Song Mu only remembered that this person liked to play with himself on a daily basis and was also one of the guys who encouraged him to leave the city that day. Isn't this the only child of the Song family? Why? Have you come back to life? I heard that a few days ago, I was foolish to study and even went to Yanggang alone. Qi Dazhua took 2 steps forward and opened the folding fan with a playful expression, shaking out a pair of peach blossoms on the fan. He also learned to use his half-hidden face, which was full of yin and yang, and looked at Song Mu with weak eyes. I heard that there will be fox demons appearing in the evening at Yanggang. They love to dress up as peerless beauties, and they are all beautiful and pitiful. They suck on the yang energy of newcomers and are unique. I heard that when the butcher Wang picked up you, a child chicken, and returned, you were disheveled, like a dead fish or rotten shrimp. Isn't it that you went to Yanggang and had a great time with the fox demon there, Dugu Miao? Why don't you talk to Master Qi about your sexual encounter? Master Qi will also reward you with a few copper coins to go to the revival hall and catch 2 sets of tonifying Qi powder. Qi Dazhua said with his eyes almost narrowed, and the servants behind him laughed and even the people next to him cast strange glances at Song Mu. Song Mu's statement that he is not angry or embarrassed is false, but at this moment, he has a plan in his heart. He will bring back the original owner whatever he says. After hearing what Prince Qi said so extravagantly, I believe he must be very familiar with going to Yanggang. So, the fox demon came with his mouth open, haven't he seen it with his own eyes? Then I have to ask Prince Qi why he left me alone at Yanggang that day, was it intentional? Bold. How dare you slander us, Prince Qi? A ferocious servant rushed out to scold Song Mu, but Song Mu glanced at him. At that moment, the servant felt like he was being targeted by a fierce tiger, with eyes that were about to devour people. The servant unconsciously shuddered, but swallowed the words on his lips, only to hear Song Mu speak. Qi Gongzi, your dog barks so badly that it's disturbing my eyes. Song Mu dropped a sentence and was about to leave, while the other servants knew they were cursing them. They, who were used to being domineering, immediately approached, and Qi Dazhua looked at Song Mu leaving with a gloomy expression. Kid, how dare you say that to me? The servant who was drunk was about to come up and retrieve the venue, but suddenly heard Song Mu snort coldly. Xiangmo has a body, but people are impolite. People are impolite, but who does not die? A short sentence suddenly burst out from Song Mu's mouth, and the words turned into a cold wind, causing the hair of these servants to stand on end and their hearts to beat a little flustered. The servant walking at the front suddenly covered his chest, spat out a mouthful of blood, and then fell to the ground, looking as if he had been seriously injured. Speeches and swords. You're not right. You're a child, how could you gather your literary strength and use this method of martial arts? Qi Dazhua, whose chest was also suffocated by the sudden cold wind, changed his expression. He put away his fan and looked at Song Mu in shock. The people around him also retreated and their eyes narrowed when they heard this situation. The literati of the literary dynasty are the most esteemed, and scholars can gather their literary strength to compose poems, songs, and essays, and then angrily kill ordinary people. Song Mu was not yet a scholar, and his literary position as a child could only nourish his body. However, this sentence was indeed in Song Mu's mind at that moment, and he was extremely angry. He accidentally blurted it out of his mouth. This is an ancient poem from the Book of Songs and Yongfeng Xiangmo. The original intention was to criticize those who claimed to be noble and rebellious against propriety, but in fact, it is the most shameless and unreasonable. It is the most direct, explicit, and hate-relieving poem in the Book of Songs. At that time, Song Mu only listened to his mentor's explanation while studying the Book of Songs, so he wrote it down. However, when he just spoke it out, his mind was shocked. An invisible force enveloped the child's writing position hanging around his waist and then swung open, finally creating this strange scene. At this moment, Song Mugen didn't pay attention to the barking of the dog behind him, just closed his eyes and felt the strangeness in his mind. That is exactly the comprehensive mirror of ancient and modern poetry that I bought from the antique market, but at this moment, the first 10 pages of the book are all shining with gold, with 5 words prominently written on them. Annotations on Song's ancient words. And the sentence I said was exactly the ancient quote from the Book of Songs written above, but the difference is that the annotations below this quote are not the literal meaning, but the method of transforming literary power into combat power. Scholars learn literature by immersing themselves in the literary spirit of their articles, accumulating over time. When they wave their hands and see their literary spirit, they become scholars and gather their literary strength, only then can they step onto the path of humanity. This is an article annotation left by the 4 generations of ancestors of the Song family, but I never imagined when it was absorbed by the comprehensive mirror of ancient and modern poetry. It unexpectedly became a literary force alone due to its emotional fluctuations, spraying out. The servant saw Song Mu standing still and listened to Chi Dazwa's words, each with a frightened expression. That Chi Dazwa was also a bit shocked. The Song family's child was clearly frail and even more obedient on a daily basis. How could he not see this kind of domineering ability in a few days? Is it the ancient book that Pan Wenhao mentioned? That's right, he must have understood the ancient book left by his ancestors. Chi Dazwa was determined in his heart, but now his eyes lit up. No one in Shuyang County knew that the Song family had produced 13 jinshi from the 17th generation, which is a first class cultural heritage. It should be noted that this vast Jizhou prefecture has only produced more than 200 jinshi for hundreds of years, and Shuyang County has only produced 3 cultural heritage. 15 jinshi are treasures left by the ancestors of the Song family, which must be a precious treasure in the world. Zhang Er, he injured the young master without reason. I arrested him and took him to the yamen for questioning. Chi Dazwa quickly said, thinking in his heart about how to make his civil servant uncle think of a way to let Song Mu tell him the method of writing in strength. I should have thought of this way to take away his ancient books, and there was no need to deceive him into going outside the city and causing such trouble. Not yet. He's the one who hurt people first, everyone has seen it. Chi Dazwa shouted loudly, and a few servants gritted their teeth and gathered the courage to attack Song Mu. At that time, a ruler suddenly fell out of nowhere behind Song Mu, and everyone heard a sharp shout coming from the corner of the street. Who dares to take action? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Naming like a tiger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Naming like a tiger. A hearty shout came, and the sound sounded like a bell ringing in everyone's ears. Song Mu also looked up, and when Chi Dazwa heard this, he was also shocked and hurriedly looked to one side. I only saw a person walking out of an inconspicuous alley. He had a white face and was wearing a round-necked robe, with a black veil wrapped around his head straight. He was holding a book in one hand and walking forward quickly. Song Mu's expression stiffened, and he quickly bowed with both hands, speaking respectfully. Sun Fuzi. Sun Fuzi, Chi Dazhua quickly bowed and said when he saw the arrival. The several family members paused and looked at each other. This Sun Fuzi is exactly the head of the county school, Sun Yi. He is a literati with the position of Xingwen. He usually treats people very kindly in the city of Shiyang County, but he is extremely strict in disciplining the students in the county school. Last year, Song Mu became a child student, ranking 32nd. Normally, he could only continue his studies in a private school, but after all, he was a direct descendant of the Song family in terms of cultural background. The county education and county magistrate had many relevant photos, so he became a student of this Xuanzi master. Although Chi Dazhua was not a child student, as a prestigious family in Shiyang County, he was naturally able to enter the county school as a Confucian scholar. Sun Fuzi was also his mentor, and at this moment, he was also respectful. Nurturing and nurturing are the blessings of parents, preaching, imparting knowledge and resolving doubts are the blessings of teachers and models, and we dare not disrespect them. And when Xuanzi saw Chi Dazhua, he also snorted. With a force from his feet, he saw a piece of gravel flying out of the ground and hitting Chi Dazhua's knee. Chi Dazhua knelt down with a sigh, but lowered his eyebrows and eyes. "Extend your hand." Sun Fuzi continued to walk and spoke. Chi Dazhua lowered his head and respectfully extended his two hands, and the ruler suspended on Song Mu's side swung forward, fiercely drawing into Chi Dazhua's palm. Sin 1, insulting fellow disciples. He waved his ruler again as he spoke. Sin 2, strange attire and disrespect for literati appearance. The third crime is to insult in the street, which is a loss of literary demeanor. With the swing of the Sanjie ruler, Chi Dazhua's face turned red, but he dared not make any noise. The county learned the rules and punished him severely for making a sound. The people coming and going on the street naturally catch a glimpse of all of this, but when teachers teach students, even if parents come, there is absolutely no reason to explain it. Song Mu also stood on the side, bowing his head respectfully. It was only after Chi Dazhua had received 3 rules that Sun Fuzi allowed him to stand up. Go back and recite the 1,000-character essay. Tomorrow at the school, I will take the exam to teach you. There are also thousands of characters in this world, but it is no longer the rhyme written by Zhou Xingxi of the northern and southern dynasties, but the most basic article for enlightening children's literary skills written by the great Confucian scholar who developed his literary skills. After hearing this, Chi Dazhua's face turned bitter, but he also quickly bowed and left with a group of people. At this moment, Xuanzi walked up to Song Mu, who looked up with a smile. Xuanzi, who had no face, let out a cold snort and walked forward. Song Mu, today you are only relying on your ancestors Yin Zhe. Don't think that children can retreat from the enemy, and only by becoming a scholar can you be considered to have entered the path of literati. Song Mu quickly followed and lowered his head, whispering softly to Sun Fuzi. Master, do you see it? I couldn't escape the eyes of Sun Fuzi, who was a Juren, for being able to retreat from the enemy. However, the other party pointed out the reason directly, which surprised Song Mu a bit. Did you hear what I said? Sun Fuzi didn't answer, just asked again. Song Mu quickly nodded and respectfully responded. Please remember, disciples. Sun Fuzi nodded before speaking again. Recently, there have been rumors and gossip about you in Shiyang County. How are you prepared to deal with them? The students don't know, please teach them. Song Mu happily kicked the ball to the opponent, but Sun Fuzi said calmly. This is your matter. I will only ask one question today. If in the past you have been hiding your strength, then after this incident, you have figured it out and will show your sharpness. Xuanzi spoke calmly, but Song Mu's expression was somewhat bewildered. The other party might have thought that he had just pretended to be dull before, but now he has stopped pretending and is showing his cards. After all, Master Sun never imagined that his body had already replaced a soul, and that sharp appearance was actually his true nature. However, since Sun Fuzi thought he had been hit and did so, it happened to give him an excuse and he didn't pick up the conversation at the moment. Sun Fuzi saw that Song Mu was silent, so he continued to speak. I have personally inquired about what happened to you this time. Fortunately, you are not in any major trouble. Otherwise, there will be people in this county school who will be expelled from their ranks. With a stunning remark, Song Mu was a bit dumbfounded at the moment, thinking that he had only met the oracle once and was only interested in the glory of his own ancestors. He didn't expect to be remembered and questioned. This may also be the reason why Sun Fuzi, who has always been concerned about the face of others, tortured Chi Dazhua on the street. There is indeed some hidden truth about this matter. Sun Fuzi is helping to deter Xiao Xiao. Sun Fuzi seemed to have seen through Song Mu's thoughts and explained. Our great Yuan dynasty has been in power for over 200 years, and today the highest emphasis is on academic style. This time, we will investigate the world's cultural heritage to select good and generous individuals. As one of the few cultural traditions in our Shiyang county, your Song family cannot be cut off. I'm telling you this today to warn you not to take any more risks, nor to let you rely on your ancestor Inza to act recklessly. From now on, stop staying in the city and focus on studying to go to the hospital for a trial. If any villains trouble you again, please let me know. Xuanzi said so, his hand shining slightly, and Song Mu saw the light fall on the Tongxing jade pendant on his waist. He was dumbfounded, but also bowed respectfully. Students must remember. Well, that's it. Go back to school as soon as possible. The college entrance examination is not far away. Sun Fuzi waved his hand and walked leisurely away, but Song Mu's expression sank, and now he had some thoughts in his heart. Everyone is saying that they went to Yanggang on their own, but the problem is that in their memory, it's not like that. This thing is becoming even more mysterious, and now that Sun Fuzi said so, who actually did it and how much did they really mean to die on their own? At this moment, Song Mu refused to give up in his heart, almost causing the demise of the Song family. Such a heinous crime, it doesn't matter if others turn a blind eye, but as a member of the Song family, he cannot give up on it. Moreover, if someone really wants to harm themselves or the Song family, then they must have a few ulterior motives, and it would be best to personally eradicate this calamity. After thinking about it, Song Mu decided to first look for the butcher Wang and confirm whether he really found himself in Yanggang there, and dig into the details carefully. Young Master Song, can I still deceive you? I went to Qingshan village to collect pigs that day, but the person who returned from the city said that my wife was going to give birth. How can I stay? Anyway, I have a strong murderous aura and even tattooed Grandpa Zhong Kue with black dog blood on my back. Even ordinary little ghosts dare not approach me. The sun and moon are shining brightly, so I bravely took a shortcut and crossed over to Yanggang. Guess what? I saw you fainting under a tree from afar. I thought I was seeing a ghost at the time, but when I approached you, I realized it was you, Prince Song. Your face turned pale and you were breathless. I quickly carried you back. In front of the butcher's meat shop, Song Mu was standing still. The fat-headed and brainy butcher Wang was now banging the lamb ribs on the chopping board while describing the scene of that day to Song Mu. And the sound of a baby crying was coming from the shop. Butcher Wang wrapped a piece of meat in straw paper, skillfully tied it with straw, and smiled as he handed it to Song Mu. Song Gongzi, I'll chop it off for you. Upon hearing the other person's words, Song Mu also lowered his head and pondered deeply. He didn't think that the always righteous and righteous butcher would deceive him, so he sighed and gave up. He then took money out of his pocket. Young Master Song, you're killing me. It's just a few bones and flesh, Wang Butcher said quickly as he saw Song Mu pay, pointing to his own meat shop sign. Our sign was written by Xiucai Gong himself. Thanks to Xiucai Gong's pen and ink, my business in the shop has been going smoothly for the past 2 years. The butcher Wang is naturally referring to Song Mu's deceased father, Song Liangtong. Seeing that Song Mu was still paying outside, Butcher Wang quickly spoke up. If Prince Song doesn't mind, I have a heartless request from old Wang. Song Mu was taken aback for a moment, then arched his hand and said, "Thank you very much to Uncle Wang for saving us this time." Song Mu didn't expect anything in return, so Uncle Wang said it was. "Song Gongzi, you're polite. If I have any ideas, I'll just think of myself as a butcher. My evil energy is inevitably a bit heavy, and I have tattoos on my back. Although Grandpa Zhong Kuei can hold on a bit, as a child, I can't bear it. I was born to cry every day. It would be better if Prince Song could give the child a more tough name. As a rough person, I only know how to use a nickname, called Stone. After listening, Song Mu smiled with relief and also listened to the constant crying of the child in the room. Even calming it was ineffective. Looking at the bloody sheep, pigs, and wild game on the chopping board, it was likely that the evil energy had disturbed the child, and he also frowned and pondered. "Do you have a pen and paper?" After a moment, Song Mu asked, and Wang Butcher quickly called out to a fortune teller not far from the street. Starting with a brush, Song Mu, who has been practicing calligraphy for many years, suddenly felt a bit friendly and immediately waved his ink to start writing. "Like a tiger." The fortune teller recited these two words and his eyes lit up. "Okay, what a great name. Shanjun can shake evil spirits. Song Gongzi, I don't know what the reason for these two words is." Wang Butcher was also pleasantly surprised and asked with a look of anticipation. When he returned to the city carrying Song Mu's name, he had a plan. Wang Butcher also had a selfish intention, wanting to touch the light of the Song family's culture. Song Mu's heart moved as he spoke in a sinking voice. A short poem that came from accidental contemplation, swallowing thousands of miles of energy like a tiger. This is the most bold and unrestrained poem by the great poet of the bold and unrestrained school, Xian Qiji, and a true model for everyone. The butcher Wang's face was solemn, but the fortune teller's gaze was fixed on the two words written by Song Mu on the paper, and he immediately asked in panic. "Young master, I wonder where this font comes from." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Confusion and Confusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Confusion and Confusion. Song Mu has been copying calligraphy for 10 years, and he has gained a lot of experience in regular script. However, he is most skilled in the thin gold script of the Tang Dynasty, which can be said to be effortless. This casually written style is naturally thin gold script. The slim gold body movement pen is agile and fast, with a thin and powerful handwriting, but it is extremely thin without losing its flesh, and its style is extremely unique. The Tang Dynasty already had unique regular script fonts such as Yen style and Lu style, which were complete in bone and flesh, with vigorous and dignified strokes, making them a model of regular script. However, this thin gold font was created by Zhao Ji, Emperor Huizong of Song, and can be said to be a unique creation of calligraphy. In this world, calligraphy has already transitioned from clerical script to regular script, but the calligraphy systems it has formed are not uniform. Even though Yen and Lu styles are mostly recommended by literati, the written font still carries a touch of ancient charm, which is used to drive literary power. But now, the two characters, like a tiger, written by Song Mu give people a clean and majestic look. Coupled with the words and short sentences spoken by Song Mu, the fortune teller who has read for several years now has straight eyes. Song Gongzi is worthy of being a descendant of the Song family. Such achievements are beyond our reach. The fortune teller's eyes turned and he said he was about to reach out for it, but the butcher next to him snatched the paper and threw a few copper coins at the fortune teller. "Sun Banxian, this can't be as you please. It's a gift from Prince Song to my son. From now on, he will have my son carry it with him. I'll just compensate you with some money." Sun Banxian looked at the things being taken away with his eyes, his expression suddenly regretful, and he quickly turned around to look at Song Mu, his face full of hope. "Young Master Song, why don't you come up with another pair of calligraphy treasures? I will also calculate a hexagram for you to seek good fortune and avoid misfortune." At this moment, Song Mu was in such a state of mind that he only wanted to investigate his own affairs to prove his innocence. Moreover, the font was hasty, and Song Mu dared not reveal anything recklessly. So Song Mu just smiled and arched his hand, turned around and quickly left. The butcher Wang chased after him to hand over 2 pounds of high-quality pork belly, only to see that Song Mu had already walked out of the alley. Alas, this young master of song has become quite kind now. The butcher Wang didn't catch up and thought of delivering the meat directly to the Song family's house in a while son Banxian next to him also walked up, his 2 small beards trembling. "You're being kind. The 2 words Song Gongzi don't even match your 2 pounds of meat." "How did you say that, son Banxian? Don't be fooled by me." Butcher Wang touched his beard and said in a deep voice, but the half-immortal shook his head, his eyes filled with envy. The power of literati is not something that ordinary people like us can understand. Although Song Gongzi is a child, it is just these 2 words. In the future, I think this young master of the Song family should be somewhat extraordinary. Butcher Wang didn't care, but when he returned to the shop, he let out a faint sigh. It turned out that his son, who had been crying for a while, had stopped crying. His wife had already coaxed him to sleep. And his own son was tightly holding onto the piece of paper with Song Mu's name written on it, looking at the words, "like a tiger," on it. Wang Butcher's heart was also momentarily stunned, and he murmured, "Hi, this young master Song really gave me some blessings." Just as Butcher Wang was muttering to himself, Song Mu had already passed through the north of the city and headed towards the direction of the southern government office. Qingnan is the location of the county government office, as well as a newly built residential area, often inhabited by wealthy officials or some local elites. Song Mu came here not to go to the government office, but to find one of the household surnamed Pan. In his memory, he made a bet with the young master of the Pan family, Pan Wenhao, before going outside the city. And in that memory, Pan Wenhao also followed him out of the city. Pan Wenhao, like Song Mu, was both a child and considered a senior brother in the same sect. However, on weekdays, Pan Wenhao relied on his father being a Shuyang county captain and became accustomed to being arrogant and domineering, gathering a group of students at the county school to act recklessly. At that time, Song Mu, who was dull and timid, naturally became the target of his bullying. He always provoked and insulted repeatedly, and later punched and kicked repeatedly for not copying his homework. It was true that he looked like a rebellious young master. And it was he who put up a bet of 10 taels of silver and asked Song Mu to go out of the city to practice courage. Song Mu believes that he can inquire about things before going to Yanggang. Arriving at the entrance of Pan's house, it was a 3-in courtyard with 2 stone pillars standing at the entrance, exuding a sense of majesty. Song Mu walked forward and knocked on the door. After a while, the door opened. A thin and black old man dressed as a servant looked at Song Mu and saw him dressed in a scholarly manner. He then asked in a warm voice, "Young master, this is Pan's house." "What's up, young master?" Song Mu smiled slightly and watched as the person dressed up. He immediately revealed his Tongxing jade pendant around his waist and spoke up. "Thank you, I'm Song Mu, a student from the county school. I'm taking a break today and I'm here to find Mr. Pan from your mansion. May I know if he is available?" "Young master is studying hard today, let's come back another day, young master Song." "That won't work." Song Mu pushed his hand to stop him with a calm expression, saying, "Uncle, just go and say that I, Song Mu, have come back alive from going to Yanggang. He should give me what he promised." "Go to Yanggang? Oh, you're that." Upon hearing Song Mu say to go to Yanggang, the old man seemed to have a sudden realization. He arched his hand and turned his head back to report. Song Mu stood at the door and rubbed his nose. The bad news spread far and wide. It seemed that the people of the city were aware of the news of going to Yanggang on his own. Can this be considered as gossip news of this era? The descendants of the declining family achieved nothing, and even learned to gamble and go to Yanggang to seek excitement, but were eventually rescued by human danger. This statement is indeed somewhat misleading. Since this matter has already insulted my manners, I must find justice even more. This matter must be thoroughly investigated by Pan Wenhao. In no time, the side door opened, and Song Mu followed the old man into the courtyard. He turned all the way to the backyard, only to see a person kneeling in the courtyard reciting an article loudly, while a beautiful woman sat in a nearby chair. At this moment, she was holding a willow stick in her hand. As soon as the kneeling person paused, he immediately reached out and beat the back with the willow stick. Song Mu walked forward and immediately saw clearly that Pan Wenhao was kneeling, and the beautiful woman who was clinging to the willow twig had a face that resembled his mother. Seeing this situation, Song Mu quickly bowed and bowed. "Young student Song Mu, have you met madam?" The beautiful woman glanced at Song Mu, but her movements did not stop. She then whipped Pan Wenhao before asking Song Mu. "I don't know why Prince Song came this time, but what did Wenhao agree to?" Seeing Pan Wenhao reading, the Great Learning, with a bitter expression on his face, Song Mu lowered his gaze slightly and whispered, "Madam, Song Mu came here to inquire about the reason why I went to Yanggang a few days ago. This matter is somewhat suspicious, and I don't remember much when I woke up. That's when I came to inquire about Pan Tongyen." Upon hearing Song Mu's words, the beautiful woman clearly felt a bit displeased and speculated that it was Pan Wenhao who caused the trouble, but she didn't show any anger, just said to Pan Wenhao, "Wenhao, what exactly is going on? Have a good conversation with Prince Song." Pan Wenhao, as if granted amnesty, knelt down and turned around, while Song Mu quickly moved away, arched his hand and said to the beautiful woman, "Excuse me for being presumptuous, but the eldest husband can kneel down to your own teacher. Pan Tongyen and I are fellow disciples and dare not accept this great gift." Upon hearing Song Mu's words, the beautiful woman raised her eyebrows, giving Song Mu a high glance, but nodded and asked Pan Wenhao to stand up. Pan Wenhao, who had been kneeling on the ground for a long time, stood up with the help of his servants, but there was no expression of gratitude towards Song Mu in his eyes. He only spoke up. "Song Mu, I was arguing with you about going outside the city to practice courage, but I didn't say I wanted you to go to Yanggang." Song Mu's face remained calm as he continued to inquire. "I don't know what Pan Tongyen did later on. I remember going out of the city with Pan Tongyen, but why did I end up alone and almost lose my life?" Song Mu said so, and there was already a hint of anger in his words. The beautiful woman also let out a soft snort, and Pan Wenhao shivered all over before speaking with an unhappy expression. "I just took you to a deserted tomb 5 miles outside the city. At that time, it was getting late, and Chi Dazhua and the others were clamoring to go back. At that time, the forest was dark and dark. Suddenly, Xiaowu said he heard the sound of ghosts crying and ran away. I was also extremely scared, so I followed suit." "So you're leaving me like this?" Song Muzhui asked. Pan Wenhao looked a bit embarrassed and said, "I don't remember. I only remember you crying and following behind at the beginning, and suddenly there was no sound. I didn't dare to turn back and ran all the way back to the city, only to find that you were missing." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Pan's Little Abacus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Pan's Little Abacus. In the Pan family courtyard, Song Mu asked Pan Wenhao many things, but in the end, he only got one result. That's how no one saw Song Mu get to go to Yanggang. This made Song Mu even more puzzled, as a simple bet between young people turned into an unsolvable puzzle. It seems that as soon as I arrived in this world, I was shrouded in a dark cloud. It seems unlikely to unravel the rumors and gossip about going to Yanggang. After Song Mu pondered for a moment, Pan Wenhao saw that Song Mu was no longer speaking and glanced at his mother, feeling a little uneasy. He immediately spoke up. Song Tong Yen, I don't know if there's anything else. If it's gone, I'll continue to study. At the age of 18, Pan Wenhao appeared extremely obedient in front of his mother, but upon hearing this, Song Mu curved his lips and said with a smile. Of course, there's one more thing, Pan Tong Yen. We agreed on that day. If we come back from outside the city. Song Tong Yen, I know. After reading the book, I will go find you. Pan Wenhao immediately interrupted Song Mu's words, looking a bit flustered. He knew what Song Mu was doing. But I didn't tell my family that it was because of gambling with Song Mu that I got into such a situation. It was just that my classmates were causing trouble, and Pan's mother was not aware of it. At this moment, there was no color on her face. Song Mu also stopped when he saw the improvement and immediately arched his hand. Then don't disturb Pan Tong Yen's study. Song Mu turned around to leave, but he paused and turned his head, saying to Pan Wenhao, who had breathed a sigh of relief. Pan Tong Yen read 8 chapters of The Great Learning. Those who cultivate themselves by correcting their hearts, when their bodies are full of anger, they cannot be upright, when they are afraid, they cannot be upright, when they are happy, they cannot be upright, when they are troubled, they cannot be upright. It is everyone's advice to read what has been said. Sun Fuzi taught us to recite it loudly, to have a will in our hearts, and not to humble ourselves. Please encourage us. At this moment, Song Mu said this sentence with a somewhat critical tone. Upon hearing Song Mu's words, Pan Wenhao's face indeed changed. At that moment, a fierce light appeared in his eyes, but he quickly hid it and agreed repeatedly. However, his gaze kept glancing at Pan's mother beside him. Pan's mother didn't speak, just watched Song Mu leave. Although the Song family was in decline, they were also a family of cultural heritage. After reading the book, Howard prepared some gifts and went to apologize. After Song Mu left, Pan's mother clearly saw the hint, but did not explain it in front of the person. Upon hearing this, Pan Wenhao quickly responded, but felt a bit resentful and angry in his heart. That bookworm dared to come knocking and make noise, even slapping himself in the face of his mother. After walking through the gates of hell once, could someone surnamed Song still have a bear-like heart and leopard-like courage? Pan Wenhao knelt down to read, thinking about how to give Song Mu some good looks in the future, and Song Mu had already leisurely returned home to start studying. At sunset, Yuan Shun from Shuyang County returned to his house exhausted. After dinner, the father and son sat in the main room, and when Pan Wenhao talked about today's events, Pan Shun frowned. So Song Mugua really told you this? Yes, Dad. Song Mu is so shameless that he even learned from Sun Fuzi to teach me a lesson. He is trying to blame me entirely for his accident. Dad, the child must not be insulted like this, especially Song Mu. Pan Wenhao and Pan Shun were sitting together in the main room, with an angry expression on their faces, as if their father was present and they were their support. Song Mu had no need to be afraid anymore. Upon hearing Pan Wenhao speak like this, Pan Shun burst into laughter twice. A few strands of beard on his skinny face also shook, and he picked up a teacup to rinse his mouth, saying to Pan Wenhao. Interestingly, Hao, perhaps you don't know that Song Mu was still drinking and cursing the children of the Qi family on the street today, and somehow he unleashed a wave of literary strength and even injured the servant of the Qi family. The servant of the Qi family carried him home, and I heard he was deflated. What? Pan Wenhao exclaimed in surprise, but suddenly remembered something. He opened his mouth and asked, is it that Song Mu did it? Not bad. Pan Shun touched his beard, and a few flashes of semen flashed through his gloomy eyes. But he's just a child, Pan Wenhao said anxiously. So what? Don't forget his 4th-generation ancestor of the Song family. He used to be the Minister of Rites of the Great Yuan dynasty and even wrote books to establish his reputation. Nowadays, there are records in the county annals that Song Wenrong wrote a book and passed it down. Once he completed the book, he rose to the level of a great scholar, and his literary strength could open up mountains and seas, and with a wave of his hand, countless demons were destroyed. However, the fate of this Song family was full of misfortune, and such a talented scholar could not have lived for 70 years. Pan Shun shook his head and pouted, but his gaze turned to Pan Wenhao, saying, "It must be that Song Mu understood the ancient book left by his ancestors. It's a pity." Upon hearing Pan Shun's words, Pan Wenhao's gaze also darkened, and he immediately whispered in a low voice. "Dad, last time it was a child's mistake. I don't know where the ancient book was hidden by them. The green bricks in the Song family courtyard have been shaved clean, and Song Mu has been carefully searched on his body, but he has never seen it. But the child has already made plans. When I go to the prefectural hospital for a trial in a few days." "No," Pan Shun raised his hand to stop, his expression hesitant. "Recently, multiple cultural connections in northern Qingzhou have been destroyed. The Qing heavenly guard of the court wrote a letter stating that it was caused by demons. The emperor is ordering a thorough investigation into this matter. If the Song family's cultural background breaks down or there are other mistakes at this time, with the help of his ancestors Yin Zhe, the Ministry of Rites will definitely send someone to inquire. Moreover, now that the teachings have already been in communication with Xuanzi, Song Mu has put a measure of literary strength in his body to protect him." Pan Wenhao's expression became urgent and he said, "Dad, if there were that ancient book to nourish my spirit, my child would definitely be able to win the title of scholar in one fell swoop this time." "Father, an 18-year-old scholar, think about it. Not to mention taking the Yuan from Jizhou Prefecture, there must be the top 3 in Jizhou Prefecture. Father, don't you want to shine on the reputation of our Pan family?" Pan Wenhao spoke repeatedly, and in his passionate remarks, he even got up and knelt beside Pan Shun, tears streaming down his face. "Father, nowadays there are only 3 cultural traditions in Shiyang County. Even if we have you as the county magistrate in our Pan family, we are still looked down upon by others. If I can obtain the position of Jinshi, then it will be a cultural heritage. If I become a family of cultural traditions, then my Pan family will also rise steadily." Upon hearing this, Pan Shun's expression changed a lot, and every word Pan Wenhao said was truly ingrained in his heart. Pan Shun was also a famous scholar in Jizhou, but his son Pan Wenhao was not very intelligent. Pan Shun spent a lot of money and even personally sought advice on classics from the Qi and Kong families with cultural connections in the city, which barely allowed Pan Wenhao to pass the Imperial examination. It can be said that Pan Wenhao's talent is shallow, and he wants to gather his literary strength to obtain the position of a scholar. He still doesn't know how long he will be. Only the Song family, which has the longest cultural heritage, now has the great Confucian monument for demon control on the city wall of Shiyang County, written by its ancestor Song Wenrong. This great Confucian monument has made Shiyang County stable for 100 years and has never experienced major changes. A great Confucian article can still suppress demons and stabilize the country. How can one count the sources of blessings in an ancient book that embodies Song Wenrong's hard work? Pan Shun, who had been a county lieutenant for a long time, had a plan in his mind. He had always coveted the ancient books of the Song family, but now that he was thinking so, his expression became even colder. Finally, there was a cold snort. "Well, I have my own arrangements for this matter, so you can focus on studying. Before going to the capital, my father will definitely find his Song family's ancient books for you. But I also made it clear that if the scholar's position is not suitable, you can come back and marry, have children and grandchildren to succeed." Upon hearing these words, Pan Wenhao's face lit up with joy and he kowtowed repeatedly. "Thank you, father, thank you, father." Pan Shun took a deep breath and closed his eyes, leaning back on the chair, but he didn't know what he was thinking. 3 days later, Song Mu had almost finished his cultivation, so he also wanted to go to the county school for classes. It is already late summer now, and it is not long before the hospital trial. Although the imperial examination system of the Yuan dynasty was inherited from the Tang Dynasty, with the great reform of the imperial examination by Emperor Wen Taizu Liemo, the selection of talented people from all over the world was based on their abilities to pass on the cultural heritage. The improved imperial examination system has become somewhat similar to the Ming and Qing dynasties, making it more fair and just. And this year's college entrance examination coincided with the annual examination. Scholars from Shuyang County gathered at the county school, preparing to successfully complete the annual examination and then participate in next year's township examination. Such an opportunity is also a good time for young students to seek advice from talented individuals. Song Mu has been studying at home these days and knows that working behind closed doors is better than asking the old students about their answering skills. Naturally, he will not miss such an opportunity. Holding the books that had been flipped through several times in the past few days, Song Mu walked slowly to the entrance of the county school. Before he could step in, he heard a person eagerly greeting from behind. "Brother Song, I've seen you today, how are you doing?" Liren is a person of the same age with a sincere face, about the same age as Song Mu. He is the eldest grandson of the Kong family in Shuyang County. 7 years ago, Kong Siki, the father of the Kong family, became a jinshi and also passed down a lineage. The Kong family has some connections with the Song family, who are also members of the same lineage. Most of the supplements sent a few days ago came from the Kong family. Thank you very much for taking care of Brother Kong these days. His health has improved a lot. Song Mu also smiled and saluted, but his gaze inadvertently turned to the person following him. That was a person wearing a light blue skirt, with a hanging bun on his head. He was only 13 or 14 years old, but his beautiful face had a hint of arrogance. At this moment, a pair of clear, watery eyes were staring at Song Mu. Arrange bowls and ask for various tickets Sigma, end of this chapter. Chapter 7. County School Poetry Writing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 County School Poetry Writing, Brother Song, this is Miss Li Amour. She is the daughter of the Li family in Mianzhou. Her father and father are both officials in Jingzhou. During my father's visit, Miss Li happened to be visiting relatives in Fuzhou and came here to experience the scenery of Jiangnan. Confucius spoke in harmony, and Song Mu quickly arched his hand. Since they were both children of a family with cultural heritage, even a woman should have some respect. Moreover, judging from the proud appearance of this little girl, she must have been quite favored by the family. The young woman has met the young master, and it turns out that he is a descendant of the Song family in Shuyang. Li Amour, standing beside Kong Zong, was not at all reserved. Although she had also saluted, she spoke with a crisp expression, her eyes fixed on Song Mu, spinning around with a hint of curiosity. Yes, Song Mu is the 17th generation eldest grandson of the family, and he is very ashamed. Li Amour saw Song Mu's expression calm, but she blinked slightly before suddenly asking. The little girl heard that the Song family of Shuyang was also famous all over the world, but she didn't know how well the young master's poetry and articles were written. Song Mu was taken aback and looked at Kong Zong. The other party smiled helplessly, presumably assuming that they had taken the exam so suddenly and slightly tricky. However, listening to the other party's words, there was no malice in them, and Song Mu remained calm. He immediately arched his hand and said, "I'm sorry, I have learned a few poems and verses, but they are just like articles and cannot be put on the stage. After all, Song Gongzi is a child, and he must have some proficiency in writing, poetry, and prose." Li Amour, however, refused to let go and continued to inquire at the entrance of the county school, with a curious expression. Confucius next to him quickly came out to smooth the situation. "Miss Amour, we naturally dare not show off Tong Sheng's articles and poems here. Brother Song still has some talent, but he was feeling unwell a few days ago. How about having Brother Song discuss it with you again someday? What do you think? Speaking, Confucius turned around and said to Song Mu. Brother Song, don't blame me. Miss Mo loves poetry, songs, and prose the most. These days, I have also been tested and taught by Miss Mo several times. Upon hearing this, Song Mu immediately cast a grateful gaze. Of course, he remembered the poem that Tong Sheng tried to write by Song Mu, but he could only say that it rhymed in a flat tone, and the rest was without any distinctive features. If he were to recite it at the entrance of the county school at this moment, it would be a bit embarrassing. Seeing Kong Zong rescue himself, Song Mu also breathed a sigh of relief. However, looking at the hopeful expression on Li Moer's face, Song Mu immediately arched his hand and said, Brother Kong, Miss Moer, why don't we enter the county school first? Song has occasionally gained something at home these days. If Miss Moer doesn't mind, after class, I will bring Mo to write for Miss Moer's first grade. Oh. As soon as the sentence was spoken, both Li Mo and Kong Zong were stunned. At this moment, the bell in the county school rang, and the few of them also nodded and walked inside. The three of them hurriedly entered, but Li Mo blinked for a moment but took 2 steps forward. Young Master Song, I wonder what kind of poetry do you usually like to write the most? Upon hearing these words, Song Mu was also stunned for a moment, looking at Kong Zong with an awkward expression on his face. Where exactly did you find this little girl? Why was she so aggressive towards this stranger just when we met? At this moment, Kong Zong's eyebrows were completely furrowed. When Li Mo returned with his father and others, his father only said that her family couldn't afford it and asked him to treat her well. Even myself, I can't bear the difficulties these days. When I came to the county school today, the other party also followed me, without any courtesy or the reserved demeanor of a woman from a family of cultural backgrounds. Seeing Confucius also looking helpless, Song Mu could only sigh. Just as he was about to politely refuse, a person walked out next to him. Sun Fuzi. Song Mu quickly turned his head and saw Sun Fuzi coming this way. He also quickly bowed, but Sun Fuzi spoke up. Song Mu, is this girl asking you to write poetry? Song Mu was dumbfounded, but Li Mo immediately walked out to salute, with a smile on her face, but still with a somewhat arrogant expression, and spoke in response. Yes, master. Young Master Song just promised the young woman. Li Moer's voice was clear, and she was in this county school. Many people had heard this sentence and looked over one by one, thinking it was quite interesting, whispering and pointing. And Sun Fuzi blinked his eyes and even touched his chin, feeling a little worried. Only Song Mu was extremely depressed. He had originally come to the county to study for tutoring, but the result was that he had become what he is now. Song Mu, do you really have something in mind? At this moment, Xuanzi asked, and Song Mu was stunned. He could only silently nod. That's good, Japan is the day to test and teach you poetry. You have a good foundation in selecting characters for your poetry, but you are not satisfied with writing sentences. If you do have some ideas today, please write them for me to see. Sun Fuzi said so, and Song Mu suddenly fell silent. It was a coincidence that this happened together. Nowadays, riding a tiger is difficult, and Sun Fuzi still seems to be very interested in pushing the waves forward. It seems that he can only grit his teeth and write now. The news that Sun Fuzi was going to teach Song Mu poetry suddenly spread within the county school. A group of scholars and young scholars quickly ran out of the school, some of whom were also caught by Sun Fuzi. At this moment, they placed several tables in the county college together with Song Mu, each taking out their pens, ink papers, and inkstones, and then gently smoothed the bamboo paper and splashed the ink. Alas, Tong Sheng has to take the monthly exam to teach poetry recitation and writing. If he can't pass, he will play the board. As Confucian students, we only take the exam in March. However, last time Master slapped my hand, I still feel pain now. Don't complain, their children are really upset, but Xing is going to take the Song Mu exam. Isn't the poetry that Song Mu tried last time for their children very good? It's hard to say what's just right. Didn't you hear what Xing said? With skin and bones, it's much worse. Otherwise, how could you get into the top 30 as a child of a family with cultural heritage? Alas, it seems that the Song family's cultural background has indeed declined. The main family's cultural style has dissipated, and it's better for them to be their collateral branch in Hongzhou. A few Confucian scholars were whispering in the courtyard, while the scholars were guessing what kind of poetry to write and how many decent poems they could produce this time. Pan Wenhao was also among them, but this time he was not picked up by Sun Fuzi. He was standing with Qi Dazhua and exchanged a glance, both of whom had a hint of schadenfreude and ridicule on their faces. On weekdays, they love to bully Song Mu the most and know his skills the most. He knows the meaning of the classics and can read the 4 books and 5 classics, but he is not sensitive to poetry. Even the teachers say that his poems are deceiving rural villagers, making people laugh and be generous. At present, the two are spreading various rumors among the crowd. However, at this moment, Song Mu did not pay attention to the noise around him, but carefully studied his ink, while his mind was pondering poetry. It's not a problem to choose your own words and sentences, but in today's situation, if you can't come up with 1 or 2 talented poems, you may be looked down upon by others. God wants me to be reborn into this world, not to be trampled down again. With such thoughts in mind, Song Mu had already made some plans. Miss Li, since you also come from a family of cultural backgrounds and have heard that you have a deep understanding of poetry, will you be the one to write this first poem? Sun Fuzi saw that Song Mu and others were ready, and then he stroked his beard again. However, he spoke to Li Mo beside him, with a very calm expression on his face. Song Mu looked up at Li Mo, who was obviously a bit surprised. However, he quickly approached in high spirits, but he snorted coldly towards the noisy surroundings, waved his sleeves, and revealed a small gourd hidden in his sleeve. He opened the gourd and took a few sips, frowning before suddenly speaking. Young Master Song hasn't answered my question yet. What kind of poetry does he usually like to write? Song Mu was stunned for a moment, pondered for a moment, and then answered softly. Let's sing poetry about things. Li Mo nodded and pondered for a moment before turning around and running to a pool under a nearby rock, pointing to the moss on top. Then please gentlemen, sing this flower. Moss flower. Song Mu was momentarily stunned when he saw what Li Mo was pointing to, and Kong Zong, who was also being tested next to him, also had a look of confusion and was pondering. And the young scholars next to them were also whispering to each other, some of whom claimed to have good poetry skills and had already started using their words in sentences. As a very popular genre of poetry, poetry about objects became popular in the Tang Dynasty. Among the complete Tang poems, there were 6,262 poems about objects, and almost all literati enjoyed expressing their ideals through objects to enhance elegance. It's just that this chanting of moss flowers should not be difficult at the beginning, but when it comes to expressing one's aspirations through objects, everyone has some thoughts in their hearts. The young lady has finished the question, young masters, please start writing poetry. Li Mo stood up and looked up at Song Mu's desk, saying, Song Mu exchanged a glance with him, and his mind was also constantly pondering. After a moment, Song Mu's heart moved and he immediately picked up his pen and dipped it in ink. Seeing that Song Mu had already finished writing in just a moment, everyone around him immediately looked over, and several scholars also showed some surprise. Song Mu had already written the first sentence. The day is not everywhere, youth comes naturally. Moss flowers are as small as rice, but they also learn to bloom like peonies. A scholar approached and gently read out the 5-character regulated poetry written by Song Mu. He also looked up for a moment, his face somewhat surprised. At first reading this poem, there was only a smooth feeling, but when the last word fell, the emotion of using objects to express oneself naturally emerged. Even flowers as small as grains of rice should bloom like colorful peonies. This meant that the scholar suddenly exclaimed, "Wonderful." A few talented scholars next to them also leaned over and read it through, nodding their heads. This poem is countless times better than what they had just thought. This Song Mu is quite remarkable. I'm afraid I didn't use all my talent to come up with such a good poem. A few young children saw that Song Mu had finished writing so quickly, and they whispered to each other. However, Song Mu picked up his pen and wrote the title of the poem, Moss, with the word moss written. The poem immediately emitted a large amount of white air, which surrounded Song Mu and melted into his body for a moment. This is the incorporation of literary style, indicating that this poem was first created by the author. And in the future, as long as this poem is borrowed by literati, it will nourish the cultural heritage of the Song family. At this moment, Song Mu was also overjoyed in his heart. He bravely wrote this poem by Yuan, the great poet of the Qing dynasty. Unexpectedly, the world accepted this poem, and the rich cultural atmosphere just now entered the body. Song Mu could feel his whole body relaxed and his mind much clearer. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Legacy of Poetry. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Legacy of Poetry. A group of scholars in the courtyard were eagerly discussing Song Mu's Moss written on paper, while the faces of Pan Wenhao, Qi Dazhua, and others who surrounded them afterwards were somewhat surprised and gloomy. They didn't expect Song Mu to actually write it out. And it seems that the poems written by the people next to him are not as good as his. And Song Mu, who had just absorbed a huge amount of literary energy, was delighted in his heart. Because the comprehensive mirror of ancient and modern poetry, in my mind slowly opened a page, revealing a few lines of handwriting on the page after the annotation of Song's ancient scriptures. Song Mu had a faint feeling in his heart that as long as he was willing, this poem could be immediately used by himself. The few lines of handwriting that were revealed were the same as the poem I had just written, and at the end of the poem, there was a small word suffix. The auxiliary battle poem is full of talent and energy. Auxiliary war poetry. For those of talent. Song Mu was stunned for a moment. It was clearly a poem about objects. How could it be any auxiliary war poem? Did this category of poetry exist in ancient times? Song Mu can understand that the 4 doses of talent is a way to measure the level of literary talent in an article. At the peak of talent, the 8 doses can produce a timeless poem, and the ultimate can reach the 9 doses of talent, shaking the world. Song Mu felt a bit strange, constantly recalling what the original owner had learned in the past. In the past, both the county school and the Song family's ancient books introduced it. Since the establishment of the Yuan dynasty, he has used literary power to fight. To gather literary strength, literati should first be filled with literary energy. When qi comes from reciting and learning ancient and modern articles and works, as well as from literary works and poems written by literati. Tong Xing's test is only to teach a reader's reading ability, to explore whether they can absorb the humanistic energy of heaven and earth. Only children with abundant literary skills can write articles in the Imperial examination, consolidate their literary skills, and step onto the path of literati. After consolidating their literary strength, they became the masters of literary power, and the great Confucian scholars created poetry, songs, and short phrases as weapons. As a result, many schools of poetry and schools of poetry emerged, allowing literati to take action to defend against the enemy and also to lead 100 soldiers in battle. The prerequisite for truly achieving all of this is the need for a scholar's literary position. Only with a scholar's literary position can one ascend to the hall and enter the room, gather literary strength, and compose poetry. But now that I am a child, I can still vaguely use this poem. Song Mu felt an indescribable strangeness in his heart, but he also came to the conclusion that such poetry must be useful to himself. After all, no one will worry about increasing their own cards. Song Mu was only momentarily shocked, and then returned to calmness. His gaze looked around, and Sun Fuzi was already enjoying Song Mu's poem. When he saw Song Mu looking at him, he reached out and handed the poem over. Not bad. Very good. Sun Fuzi spoke up and praised, and the young scholars next to him were all amazed. Everyone understood how Sun Fuzi behaved. If he wanted to get a good result from Sun Fuzi as a student, it almost represented that Sun Fuzi fully recognized Song Mu. Is this Song Mu's poem about objects even recognized by Xuanzi as good? Pan Wenhao and Qi Dazhua were both somewhat stunned, and Qi Dazhua murmured a sentence. Did this solitary seedling really enlighten after taking a trip to Yanggang? Pan Wenhao snorted coldly and said in a low voice, "It's just good luck." In today's exam scene, he must come up with 1 or 2 poems that are overwhelming. After all, he is a descendant of the Song family, and even if it is unbearable, there will always be a few good poems. Qi Dazhua nodded in agreement, while Pan Wenhao watched as Sun Fuzi was already studying other people's poetry and typing the board one by one. At this moment, he squinted his eyes and looked at Song Mu. Creating a for-do talent poem is already the limit of a child's life, and I don't believe he can come up with another similar one. While Pan Wenhao was calculating in his heart, Li Moer had already finished reading Song Mu's poetry, with a somewhat puzzled expression on his face. Perhaps I feel that the poetry written by Song Mu now is completely different from his previous performance. Did Prince Song just hide his foolishness? Li Moer suddenly asked, and her eyes narrowed even more. She looked at Song Mu eagerly. Song Mugong had just returned to his senses from his previous state, and now he was also somewhat interested in the situation of that ancient book, so when he saw Li Moer's appearance, he just grinned. Beside him, Sun Fuzi had already finished teaching the poems of these 7 or 8 children, but now he turned back to look at Song Mu. Song Mu, it seems that you have some enlightenment. As he spoke, Sun Fuzi took a deep breath and immediately spoke up. Then let's start making the second song. The Imperial examination is not just about reciting poems about objects. For this second poem, you can recite the same inkstones around you. Sun Fuzi spoke very confidently, as if he had already drafted the topic in his mind. Upon hearing this, Song Mu and others looked surprised, and Confucius also glanced at Song Mu and then smiled bitterly. On the other hand, Li Moer next to her was quite interested in this question and even nodded and said, "Master, this question is really wonderful." Song Mu also looked at Li Moer with a surprised expression on his face, and then turned his gaze to Confucius, leaving his mind blank for a moment. It's easy to say that singing about things, scenery, and expressing one's thoughts. There is no exact title for singing about the same inkstone, which makes it difficult for Song Mu to start at the moment. Xuanzi seemed to be delighted to see the worried faces of several people, and the others on the field were also very interested. Especially a few scholars were eager to try and write 1 or 2 lines of poetry, but they still felt that the intention was not good and shook their heads repeatedly. Instead, they also turned their gaze to Song Mu and others. People are like this. Once something they are very interested in is difficult to do, they like to see how others do it. Whether the other party is struggling or successful, it's not oneself who embarrasses. Kong Zong scratched his head and ears beside him, but instead encouraged Song Mu, who had just written good poetry. "Brother Song, believe in yourself, just write by hand, don't be tied up. Yeah, hurry up and write it. We also want to take a look." The others also cheered along, each one full of interest. Song Mu also sighed and could only rely on the things he had memorized in his past mind. After finishing speaking, Song Mu reached out to grind the ink, pondering in his heart, murmuring in his mouth, furrowing his brows tightly, looking as if he had no idea. Confucius also felt a bit uncomfortable studying ink, thinking that it was too difficult for Master to come up with this question. At this moment, Song Mu's hand suddenly paused, and then he looked up at Li Mo. He slowly turned around and respectfully arched his hand towards the north. Li Sheng, Du Sheng, I was rude today. Seeing Song Mu's respectful salute, still bowing to the already canonized Li Du, everyone's hearts jumped and they looked at Song Mu with confusion. After bowing and bowing, Song Mu turned around and picked up a pen. He dipped it in ink and dropped it, leaving black marks on the white paper. The slightly unfamiliar brush words kept appearing, and each sentence of 7-character poem leaped onto the paper. A scholar quickly leaned over and immediately began reciting. Li Du's poems have been passed down through thousands of mouths, but they are no longer fresh to this day. From generation to generation, talented people emerge, each leading the way for hundreds of years. The poem blurted out, but everyone's eyes suddenly widened a bit. The few young students who had just dipped in ink and were about to write were also suddenly stunned, and needles could be heard falling in the field. But Pan Wenhao suddenly raised his eyebrows and shouted in the crowd. Bold! Song Mu, how dare you provoke and insult saintly Du like this? Pan Wenhao felt extremely excited, as if he had already caught Song Mu's sore spot at that moment. He couldn't help but say that since the establishment of the Yuan dynasty, the best way to use literary power to defeat the enemy is to use poetic phrases, and if one wants to make the attack powerful, the poetic phrases used must be extremely talented. Li Bai's poetry is romantic yet not lacking in chivalry, with every sentence shining with sharpness. His poem, The Hero's Journey, has once slain countless great demons. Du Fu's poetry is full of ups and downs, and the literary meaning is full of passion and blood, which is also the most beloved by literati all over the world. The human race and demons have been fighting for decades, and there have been hundreds of years of the literary dynasty in the future. Countless literati in the world love to use Li and Du's poetry to enhance their literary power. With each use of Li and Du's poetry, they have strengthened their cultural heritage. With hundreds of years of nourishment, the Li and Du poetry schools can be said to be unparalleled in ancient and modern times, and are the top of the world's cultural heritage. All talented scholars in the world must learn Li Du's writings, and countless literati regard Li Du's poetry as a desirable existence. Because that is a pinnacle of poetry and the backbone of an era. But now, a little boy has made a statement that he has realized is not new, which has greatly shocked everyone present. Song Mu, how dare you slander Li Du? Pan Wenhao and Qi Dazhua immediately began to criticize as if they had caught Song Mu's grip, but their vicious words had not yet come out of their mouths. The next moment, they suddenly stopped. Because they suddenly saw the vast literary energy surging out of the white paper. The cultural atmosphere between heaven and earth is surging wildly, and the rich white energy comes from the poem on the desk. At the same time, the vast white energy begins to be surrounded by colorful light. Talented and talented. A timeless poem. It's the saying that talented people from all over the country have emerged, each leading the way for hundreds of years. A scholar shouted and unconsciously raised his hand. I feel the literary power surging inside me, these talents pouring into my body. Other young scholars also exclaimed in surprise, and at this moment, one by one, their faces were shocked. Li Amoer, standing at Song Mu's table, was also slightly stunned. And Sun Fuzi was already serious enough to swing his sleeves and step forward, looking at Song Mu with a serious expression, only to see that Song Mu had already written the title of this poem. On July 5, present to Kong Zhongxiong in Shiyang County School the same inkstone, as the name of the poem fell, the surging literary energy on the paper became even more terrifying, and this vast literary energy transformed into colorful ribbons that first entered the body of Confucius and then spread out in all directions. Almost everyone in the field was swept by the colorful ribbons of talent. At that moment, the rich cultural atmosphere made everyone's eyes change. Place a bowl and ask for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Is a timeless Xingwen poem. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 is a timeless Xingwen poem. Is this Xingwen poetry? In the bustling Sheyang County School, a scholar who had just been pierced by a cultural ribbon slowly opened his eyes and trembled as he said this sentence. Xingwen poetry is a higher level of poetry than persuasive poetry. This type of poetry cannot form an attacking force, but it can cultivate the literary power of literati and make it more pure and rich. And just now, the colorful ribbon of talent swept through her body. LV Xiuzai, who had only obtained the literary title of a scholar 2 years ago, felt that the literary power that had been flowing all over her body had completely condensed and formed. At this moment, it flowed like a trickle. Lu Xiuzai's tears immediately fell down. In his early years of existence, he exerted all his strength to achieve the position of scholar and literary scholar at the bottom. However, his literary strength, which he had worked hard to consolidate, was extremely weak and delicate, and he could even collapse at any moment. This time during the annual college entrance examination, I had already given up and waited for my position as a scholar, but I didn't expect LV Xiuzai's gaze slowly turned to Songmu and the field, and he saw that countless cultural ribbons were emerging from an individual's body, converging in the sky, and then slowly falling into Songmu's body. Almost everyone looked at Songmu at that moment, their hearts surging with excitement. Today while watching poetry, I unexpectedly got such an opportunity. The hospital trial is approaching, and everyone is boosted by this sudden literary energy. Both the childlike and scholar literary abilities have their strengths. And this Xingwen poem titled, County School Tong Yan, if someone recites it in the future, it will continuously distribute literary energy to the people in today's field. This is almost a great source of blessings. At this moment, many people held Songmu in awe, even feeling a little admiration, lacking some of the previous contempt. This is the courage of a century-old cultural family. The poetry that Songmu wrote today is enough to continue the Song family's cultural heritage. These poems already have a certain Confucian flavor. Ha ha ha, good, 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 good. A talented person from every generation has emerged. Good, good, each leading the way for hundreds of years. I, Sun, have been studying for 40 years and can actually see this wonderful scenery here. It's amazing, it's so enjoyable. At that time, Sun Fuzi suddenly burst into laughter, which echoed throughout the entire county school, expressing a sense of joy beyond words. I only saw Sun Fuzi walking quickly to Songmu and looking at the poem written on paper. He immediately spoke up and said, original Xingwen poetry is highly talented. This is a great achievement in education. Songmu, your poem will definitely be placed in the Dengwen Pavilion in the county. Songmu was dumbfounded, his expression stunned. Meanwhile, Kongzong, who had just awakened from his strong literary demeanor, also bowed to Songmu with an arched hand. Brother Song, this poem is my Kong family's credit to you. Thank you very much, Song Tongyan. At the next moment, many scholars in the courtyard also bowed their hands and said, each with an excited expression. Only Pan Wenhao and Qi Dazhua, who were standing among them, were pale at the moment. Just now, the poetry was full of literary energy, overflowing with countless words. It passed through everyone with colorful ribbons, but it happened to bypass itself and others. At this moment, seeing so many children and scholars showing such respect to Songmu, Pan Wenhao felt a burning pain on his face. How many of Li Du's poems, such as Xingwen poetry, are capable of achieving 8 levels of talent? This is a masterpiece that has been passed down for generations. With such a poetic and literary style, not only will the future literary journey be smooth, but even the current court trials will be more confident. But I missed this opportunity. Woo-woo, why don't I have a literary style in my body? I want a child's literary position. A servant was standing behind Pan Wenhao, crying softly, as if he knew what he had missed, with deep regret in his heart. And the sound made Pan Wenhao and Qi Dazhua's faces even paler. They took a deep breath and shook their sleeves before leaving. At this moment, Song Mu in the field was bowing his hand towards a group of fellow inkstones and teachers, and then bowing his hand towards the northern sky before carefully taking off the child's writing position from his waist and pressing it on a white paper. Song Mu's name suddenly appeared on the pure white bamboo paper. With the fall of Song Mu, the paper floated up out of thin air, and the font on it shone brightly. The white paper swept away in mid-air, passing through the city of Shuyang and landing on the top of a main building on the city tower. The colorful light swept through the sky during the day, and almost everyone in Shuyang County could see it clearly, exclaiming one by one. The phenomenon of literary achievement is the pride of scholars in this era. It is rumored that there are some people in the talented city who choose such auspicious days to do happy things. Countless cultural anomalies can also bring about a career. At this moment, Sun Fuzi had already dismissed a group of young scholars from the county school, allowing them to use this opportunity to stabilize their literary and artistic abilities. Song Mu was dragged to the study, while Kong Zong carefully copied 2 poems from Song Mu just now, looking serious and saving them. Until then, no one noticed Li Emoer's expression standing beside the table. At this moment, Li Emoer's eyes were shining, but her face was a bit full of anger, and she stood still, muttering to herself as Song Mu left. Li Du's poetry has been passed down from mouth to mouth, but with just one sentence from you, it has taken away a whole stream of scholar culture. Humph, now it's my dad who wants to blame me. Li Emoer said so, with a hint of unwillingness in her small eyes, a strange light shining in them, and whispered softly. Shuyang, Song family, Song Mu. At this moment, Song Mu, who had achieved great success, was standing in Sun Fuzi's study, feeling the strange changes brought about by the comprehensive mirror of ancient and modern poetry, in his body. He watched as the poem slowly appeared on the pages above. This is a drum battle poem, with 8 talents. And this poem was actually written by another poet of the Qing dynasty, Zhao Yi, On Poetry, Part 2. This poem may not be very popular, but the line, talented people from different dynasties emerge, each leading the way for hundreds of years, is too bold, which was once the motto of Song Mu's life. Just now, Li Emoer asked himself to sing about people, and Song Mu pondered for a moment. He felt that praising Confucius in his own identity was a bit humorous and generous, and it was better to love his house and turn it into a poem about scholars. After all, no matter what, Confucius was also a scholar. At that time, Song Mu felt that writing this poem was too rebellious, and even intended to apologize to the North. He did not expect such a scene after the poem was completed. I also benefited greatly from it, and with the abundant cultural energy entering my body, Song Mu suddenly felt that my body had become a bit stronger, and the root of the illness left behind a few days ago seemed to have been cured. A poem in prose, surprisingly, makes oneself feel like being reborn. In this strange era, there is a strange cultural atmosphere and power. Moreover, the ancient books have finally begun to be enveloped in layers of cultural atmosphere, constantly nourishing themselves. Among them, the beauty left Song Mu somewhat amazed. As Song Mu savored the benefits these things brought him, Sun Fuzi stood on one side and coughed, looking up at Song Mu. Should I say now that this is a revival of the Song family's cultural heritage, or is it that your Song Mu is no longer Song Mu? Sun Fuzi said so, which made Song Mu's heart tighten, but he heard Sun Fuzi shake his head and say. In the past, you were as plain and unremarkable as a stream stone. I thought your Song family's cultural heritage was about to decline, but I didn't expect it. Sun Fuzi sighed like this, but he took a book from the bookshelf and handed it directly to Song Mu. Song Mu stepped forward and took it with both hands, which was an annotation of a poem. Your Song family has always been well read, and I don't think this can compare to what the Song family has accumulated over 100 years. However, my book, Annotations on the Complete Poetry, was annotated by the top scholar in the Qing Dynasty 10 years ago when he was a scholar. Its meaning is quite easy to understand and its interpretation is clever, which can be considered as the reward I am giving you today. Sun Fuzi said calmly, but in his words, he was already very satisfied with Song Mu. Song Mu breathed a sigh of relief at the moment, thinking that Sun Fuzi had realized that he was not the original Song Mu. When he saw the other party giving him something, Song Mu also thanked him repeatedly. I don't have much connection with Sun Fuzi myself, but after all, the other person cares about me, so it's better to be polite. But as soon as the words fell, Sun Fuzi's expression suddenly became serious. Your story today will surely spread throughout Shiyang, even Jizhou Prefecture, but you don't have to worry. Li Du Shizong won't do anything to you for such a poem. On the contrary, you should pay attention to some people around you. Song Mu blinked his eyes, his heart twitched, and Sun Fuzi indeed said. You naturally know who it is, but let me say one more thing. After all, you have the blood of the Song family and the knowledge left by the Song family. When your ancestors wrote books and biographies, they stared at that thing. I think there were more than one or two of them. Today when you stand out, some people will never be able to sit still. Remember. Arrange bowls and ask for tickets, all kinds of tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Kong Family Banquet. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Kong Family Banquet. Song Mu stayed in Sun Fuzi's study for only a short while, except for a few words that Sun Fuzi had warned him at the beginning. Then, Sun Fuzi tested Song Mu's knowledge to see if he had missed any of his studies. 1,000-word essay, 4 books and 5 classics, almost everything Song Mu could learn was randomly checked. Song Mu has naturally not been idle at home these past few days, and with his own professional level, these things are also readily available. Therefore, after conducting a spot check, although Sun Fuzi was not very satisfied, he nodded repeatedly. After coming out of Sun Fuzi's study, Song Mu immediately saw Confucius waiting outside the door. Brother Song, we are hosting a banquet at home today. Please make sure to come. Confucius said with a very respectful expression, which surprised Song Mu a bit. He quickly bowed and said. This can't be used, Brother Kong doesn't need to be like this. We are already friends. Confucius shook his head persistently. Don't refuse this matter, Brother Song. Today, Confucius has received great kindness from Brother Song. If we don't treat him with courtesy, then our Kong family will definitely have no face to stay in the city in the future. Confucius said with a serious expression, with a look that he couldn't refuse at the moment. Song Mu opened his mouth and couldn't refuse either, so he had to comply. But when he returned to the classroom, Song Mu immediately felt a different atmosphere around him. Both Jiao Shi and Tong Yan have become very positive towards themselves, and even some young students greet them with a hint of flattery. Song Mu felt a bit uncomfortable, but also sensed the reason behind it. The poem just now also benefited them a lot, and now their attitude towards themselves has also improved. Song Mu smiled and accepted the greetings of several colleagues, but now he also sighed helplessly in his heart. In the past, Song Mu, even though a descendant of the Song family, was at most a nodding acquaintance with everyone. But now, my own Xingwen poem has made them more cultured and literary, and they have gained tangible benefits from it. They immediately show a smiling face, exuding a hint of intimacy everywhere. This is also the result of the supremacy of literati in the literary dynasty. Strength is ultimately a person's confidence. Making friends is a return to making friends. After all, the county school is still a place for learning. After a brief period of calmness, everyone immediately threw themselves back into the sea of books. The college entrance examination is approaching, and achieving academic success is the top priority. Everyone is working hard for it. Song Mu was also flipping through several borrowed scriptures to solve problems. Although the Song family is a family with a rich cultural heritage and a scholarly family, they have encountered numerous difficulties. In the past, the house was filled with books, but in the hands of Song Mu, only a box of books remained. When the creditors came to collect the debt, even the sandalwood bookshelf containing the books was taken away. If it weren't for Song Mu's desperate efforts to protect those books, even the few books left by his ancestors would have been looted. Song Mu has read all the books at home these days, but still feels that it is not enough. Having a wide range of books is not something that can be matched by just a box of books. However, now that he is financially strapped, Song Mu can only seize the opportunity to borrow books from others to observe. Fortunately, Confucius was very generous and showed several books he brought from home to Song Mu, which made Song Mu very grateful in his heart. At noon, Song Mu had a casual meal with several classmates at the county school. In the evening, Song Mu handed in his written scriptures and articles, and was then dragged by Confucius towards his home. "Brother Song, there's no need to be too reserved. My father is already aware of today's situation and is very happy to receive such a good poem. He openly wants to see you." Song Mu was dragged towards his home by Kong Zong, and upon hearing Kong Zong say so, Song Mu was also ashamed. Kong Siki, the father of Confucius, was a jinsher from 12 years ago. Although he was only the last, he still shone brightly in his family, giving Shuyang County a third cultural heritage. Kong Siki was originally an official in another city. These days, he happened to be attending a clan festival and also came back to visit his family. Now he is in the mansion and is delighted to learn that Song Mu has written a poem to present to Confucius. He strongly demands to meet Song Mu. Song Mu followed Kong Zong to the Kong mansion, which was bustling with activity. Today, Kong Siki also invited guests, members of the Kong clan, officials, and wealthy gentry from the city, making the Kong mansion even more lively. Seeing this battle, Song Mu also looked surprised. Kong Zong was calm and led Song Mu into his house all the way, then let him rest in his study for a while. The study of the Kong family is antique and not spacious, but surrounded by bookshelves filled with various books. As soon as Song Mu walked in, he was immediately attracted, but he didn't dare to act recklessly. He could only stand and observe from a distance, sighing in his heart. Having such a study was an unattainable dream for oneself in the past, but since I am now reborn, in the future, I will also have to adjust my height in such a study. Song Mu was planning so much in his heart, but his gaze kept looking at the books around him. At this moment, the door to the study was pushed open, and 2 footsteps sounded. "Father, this is Brother N, Song Mu." Kong Zong's voice came, and Song Mu quickly withdrew his gaze and turned to look. He only saw Kong Zong at the door of the study, introducing him to a middle-aged man who was 7 feet tall, wearing a red round-necked robe with a few strands of beautiful beard. That is exactly Kong Siki, the father of Confucius. Song Mu immediately bowed and quickly spoke up. "I have met the magistrate." "Okay, are you Song Mu?" Kong Siki stroked his beard and looked at Song Mu, then praised him and walked forward. "Don't be too reserved. If you have shown kindness to my Kong family, just be closer and call me uncle. I also call you, virtuous nephew. It can be said that your father and I were also classmates and friends back then." Kong Siki was actually kind and had a kind expression, and he looked at Song Mu with admiration in his eyes. He is truly worthy of the Song family's cultural heritage, handsome and peaceful, and will surely become a great treasure in the future. Kong Siki smiled and praised Song Mu, then reached out and gestured towards the door. "Dear nephew, let me move to the banquet together. Today you are my guest of honor." Upon hearing these words, Song Mu was even more flattered and surprised. He didn't expect Kong Siki to personally come and invite him to the table. Such treatment made Song Mu feel a bit dazed. "Song Mu dare not, please invite uncle first," Song Mu quickly said. Kong Siki did not evade either, but his gaze towards Song Mu added a hint of appreciation. He then took a step forward, with Song Mu and Kong Zong half taking a step behind. Passing through the 2 gates of the courtyard, Song Mu saw that the noise was even louder, and the scenery in front of him was even brighter. He arrived at a large courtyard where more than 10 tables were set up for banquets. At this moment, there were many guests, making it extremely lively. As Kong Siki entered the hospital, all the guests in the courtyard looked over, and their gaze naturally fell on the two people following Kong Siki. The guests had no doubt about Kong Zong, who was following Kong Siki behind them. They quickly fixed their gaze on Song Mu and were surprised to see this young man who was about the same age as Kong Zong and had a somewhat handsome appearance following them. Kong Siki just said to invite a distinguished guest, "Is it just to invite such a person?" Everyone was also whispering quietly at the moment. Who is that young man? It seems to be Song Mu, a descendant of the Song family in the city. Song Mu from the family of cultural heritage. But why is Kong Gong so courteous? Perhaps it's a bit wrong. Brother Quan is not aware that there is a strange phenomenon in the city of Shiyang today. Song Mu wrote a poem about Xingwen with 8 talents, but it entered the Dengguan pavilion. Xingwen poetry. That's really impressive. Isn't it that after a while, this poem can reach the level of a saint to listen to? Who said it's not? Everyone says that the Song family's cultural heritage is declining, but now it's amazing. Look, in the future, this Song family will definitely be extraordinary. Hi, it's just a child. When Song Muching becomes a Juran and talks about these things, I'm afraid everyone may not know. A few days ago, this young master of the Song family even went to Yanggang outside the city. As soon as Song Mu entered, everyone began to whisper, but before they could say anything, Kong Siki had already taken Song Mu to the main table and stood up, arching his hands around him. Dear relatives, friends, and neighbors, today Kong is hosting a banquet to express his gratitude to all of you for your kindness, as well as to thank his virtuous nephew Song Mu for fulfilling the Confucian family's cultural heritage. Placing bowls to ask for tickets, asking for various tickets, end of this chapter.